What's happening, folks? Back with another reaction, back with some more Joy Division. And we're here, which is to say, we're continuing through the Substance compilation. Thank you again to Han Solo. And we're up to Love Will Tear Us Apart. As I think I mentioned in not only this deep dive, but also in the Cure deep dive, I know this song and I've known it since I was younger. But because of my ignorance, I had long thought I had falsely remembered it as being a Cure tune, which is interesting to me because, the lead vocals of the bands do not really sound like each other, but as I said, I didn't know either band particularly well. I probably knew The Cure better, fair to say, but even then, not well enough to correctly remember that Love Will Tear Us Apart was not a song by The Cure, but instead Joy Division. So anyway, I know this tune. I can hear the chorus perfectly in my head. To be fair, I haven't listened to it in a long time, so I imagine there will be parts of this which will be less familiar. But yes, again, I feel like this is surely one of their hits because, again, I remember hearing it on the radio as a kid. Secondarily, I will say the 80s vibes in this one are strong, even if I can't remember all the contours of the track sonically. Nevertheless, just to think about the phrase, the idea that love is a very powerful emotion, and as much as it can bring people together, it can indeed tear them apart. And I remember the rhythm of the line, love will tear us apart again, with the idea that sometimes these processes are not one and done, they are cyclical or they are repeating, they are periodic, and people might be drawn to each other but then repelled by the challenges, the difficulties, the intensity of the emotion of love. And in that regard, I am thinking, of course, of the U2 line, I can't live with or without you, which feels like it's referencing that dynamic where you can't help but be focused on and attracted to the other person, but at the same time, that same intensity makes it difficult, if not impossible. So, yeah, without even remembering the lyrics beyond that chorus line, or the line in the chorus, I feel like the sentiment is like intuitively understood. So let's give it a listen. This is Joy Division. The song is Love Will Tear Us Apart, and it's included on this compilation of their tunes called Substance. It's funny talking about cycling. More than I remember, there is this sonic cycling in the tune, and very clearly in the end with that like triple snare hit. But even more than that, the guitars before that, there's a section where it feels like it's just intensely cycling through the same riff, the same melodic run. And yeah, I suppose there may be a deliberate intent to that, the idea of the sonics representing this cycling intensity of feeling both good and bad. I will say also the vocals were more like echoic, or sort of like in this large space. Like it felt like they were surrounded by the other sounds, and like they were sort of bouncing around in between. Now again, Ian Curtis does not sound like Robert Smith, so it was just the younger me not remembering details about the sounds of the two bands. And fair to say, like, again, The Cure, as it turns out, going through their catalog, there's been a half dozen or more tunes where it's like, oh wait, I didn't recognize this by name, but I remember this, I heard this when I was younger. Whereas Joy Division, it has not had that same degree of familiarity as we've gone through Substance here, but this is one, again, that I definitely heard on the radio. But yes, ultimately, I will say one point of similarity is that this song, I think, again, with Robert Smith on vocals, would fit into their catalog, because it has that, like, if it feels like, new wave rock, but mixed with a bit of, like, melody and, like, goth vibe at the same time. It's like dark and light at the same time, and there's been a number of tunes in the Cure catalog that I've said something similar about. So yes, nevertheless, it's just classic 80s. It feels very nostalgically 80s to me. I will say that the keyboard riff is like a key part of why I think the tune works so well sonically. It's, again, the guitars, they're cycling and they have a, sort of new wave rock sound to them, but it's that keyboard line which gives it this like light mixed with melancholic / goth vibe that I think works so well. So yeah, really cool tune. And again, I didn't hear some of the other lines in the tune outside of the chorus well enough to get a sense, or the nuances of what's happening here, though again the overall idea of love tearing them apart again is very easily understood. But yeah, like I said, the vocals had this echoic, almost like they were buried under like stone or something like that, so I didn't hear everything clearly. But yeah, it's a classic, and it doesn't surprise me that this would have been a tune that caught on the radio and would have been played. Which again, I grew up in Southern California. KROQ, or K-Rock as it was and still is known, played a lot of new wave and synth pop and synth rock from the early 80s, which a lot of other radio stations in the US at the time were not doing. And in that regard, I am not surprised that I heard this, because yeah, it's definitely a tune that it just screams like first half of the 80s. So yes, ultimately I am looking forward to going through the remainder of the Substance compilation, but this is one that I had just been waiting for, so I was happy to finally get to it. So thank you again to Mr. Solo. Let me know what you think, and I will see you next time. Peace.